Yeah, when I think about, my own personal kind of exploration and definition of what comes to my mind with insight, and particularly when I'm working for myself and also with other folks, I kind of really see it as this portal to something bigger. It's this like, it feels like the threshold of this gateway to something else, which I think kind of feels in service of that bigger idea that we're holding of like how to use insight to support overall well-being,
Hmm.
um, and how to do it in this like embodied way where it's this whole body experience, and
Mm.
we're not just thinking about it as something that happens on like just the cognitive level.
Hmm.
And often I find when I'm working with folks and we're exploring something, there's this sense of like, well, I might have some more awareness, but I'm not done with the goal that we're working with. I'm not at the end. And I really like to see and think about insight as, potentially like 80% of the work that needs to be in place to really have that insight and to have this awareness, feels like the the real bulk of like what can help us move forward on the path in a meaningful way. And
Yeah, like
understand.
it sounds like part of that is insight brings some sort of resolution.
Hmm.
Like once you really get to the bottom of things, there's some sort of lightness, freedom, release there, that insight provides.
Yeah, and I think that's sometimes undervalued because we think, well, we focus on, well, what like what material or kind of actual thing has changed.
Yeah, yeah, right.
Insight is much more subtle and powerful than that.
Yes, yes. Can I share a story?
Always, I love a
Okay.
story.
So, again, I tell stories about one time in Burma, right? Um, you'll hear that a lot. So, one time in Burma, I was this was one of my this is my first or second retreat in Burma, and I had been meditating for about a month, and it's intense. It's like 10 hours, 14 hours a day of meditation, and I was really proud of myself. I felt like really good that I was like a month of meditation. I'm like really proud, and I'm walking down, to the Pindapata line, which is where you go and you can beg for your food. And as a young visiting monk, I walk past all the old monks. And these are old monks who have been meditating for like 50, 60 years and who are just like, in the forest, just solid individuals. And here I am, like a month into meditation, trotting by with my feathers puffed out and my chest puffed out, and it's smiling at everybody just to show how proud I am of myself. And and as I you know gleam my pearly whites at the old monks, they just sort of like scowl and like look at me like, uh, he doesn't know what he's doing, or the look was just like disapproval.
Mm.
I thought, oh, like, well, maybe and I expected to get like, oh, yes, he's special, sort of look from them. And, then I went back to my meditation, another couple weeks in, and I sitting in this beautiful place. There's like birds and lizards chirping, and the weather's always perfect. And I see out over the like verdant valley into the ocean. And I was like, I was depressed. I was sad. And it was like this sadness, which I always, it's like this, you know, hereditary, like temperament, I feel like almost that I felt was bad. It was like the bad part of me. It was like this hereditary failure within me, this depression that I've been fighting. And it was familiar. It was a familiar enemy. And I like try to push through it and distract myself from it and just focus on the breath and like get rid of it, which was the natural reaction. But that was all happening under the surface until eventually I realized it sort of came to the surface that I was avoiding this.
Mm.
And that's how I was reacting to that feeling. And then I intentionally was like, what am I doing? Mindfulness is about getting closer to your experience. How do I allow this to be there? How do I move closer to that? And in moving closer to that, it was scary. It felt like it was going to swallow me. I felt like I was going to die. Like I was going to lose something, or I was going to get lost in it and like go mad or something. And as I built up the courage to continue moving closer to it, continue moving closer, I realized that I was like, and I really, in that sense of like resolution, I felt all of it, right? I allowed myself to look at all of it and to feel all of it and be present with all of it. And it felt like I'd been treading water for so long, just treading water, treading water, treading water. And then I realized I was only in like 4 feet of water and that my feet touched the ground. And I felt like, well, I kind of feel like an idiot, but I also feel tremendous relief,
Mm.
tremendous relief of just allowing it to be because I was already feeling it anyway.
Right.
And that allowed me to just be at ease with it and almost befriend it and know I can handle it and feel release. And then as you know, and I felt sad, but I felt happy. I felt content and relief. And I just focused on allowing that to be there, however I was feeling, whatever was going on, just letting that land. And as I went down to the Pindapata, that line to beg for my food, weeks later, just focusing on that, I was like, you know what? I don't really care what the old monks do. I'm just going to be with this feeling, and maybe it's wrong, maybe it's right. I don't know. I'm just going to allow this because I truly feel contentment here. And as I walked by, I just sort of glanced over at the old monks and they looked at me and they gave me this smile, like, good job. You're on the right track now. It was just this like tremendous, they could just see it in my eyes. And this sort of like, you know what? It doesn't, whatever you think is whatever you think. This is working for me. And this is really solid. I feel solid. And they, immediately gave me this approving smile. And I feel like that was a really key point for me about insight and about allowing that insight is like this. It's this active process. It's something that you can intentionally cultivate on purpose regularly. That it was almost this place I could go to. This insight was a place. And I think it was the allowing, the building up the courage. I mean, there's two. There's like one is like, okay, I've somehow gained the insight that I should move towards this thing. Like
Mhm.
there's some value in there. Like this has the potential to like release suffering for me. And then which is like an insight in itself, right?
Mhm.
And then
Mhm.
there's that journey inward, and then there is that release.
And how do you feel like it changed, if it did, your life going forward? Like this kind of key moment.
Oh yeah. I mean, it guides like everything. I
In what
mean,
what's the integration
I
now?
mean, if that's a good question. If insight is this place that I go to, if it's allowing and it's an accepting, and that I find that that brings me tremendous peace, like having the awareness, the insight that brings me peace, recognizing when I'm not there, recognizing when I'm resisting, when I'm doing something else, it's like I climbed to the top of the mountain, I saw where everything was. And now I know, like when I go back down, I need to do all this to get back to the right place. I'm able to see all the stuff that's in between me and that place.
Yeah, it almost feels like perhaps there's this way in which, as we move through something and kind of have this powerful experience of insight and then integration, there's what I might understand as like a somatic imprint of like that experience, of
Hmm.
like how you felt that, how you went through
Yeah.
that, shifted from um, having the insight that you could get closer to what was being avoided and resisted, and then kind of being able to reference that or feel that in your body when you're in that place again and saying, well, is this the
Mm.
next opportunity to, oh, I'm feeling in the avoidance or resistance in my embodied experience. This is an invitation to shift back to the experience of or the practice of insight.
Right. And it's an integration on the in the other sense of like your mind and body.
Hmm.
Like that has to be present and in tune in that process. Like it's a feeling and it's also a recognition of like certain cognition happens in this place as well. Um yeah, and I think it's an integration of like, again, bringing the sciencey part of it of like the integration of different parts of the brain. It's like your thinking mind, your limbic system of like feeling and relationship and like more primal like safety. And when you feel safe, truly safe, like you're at ease emotionally, and your cognition also is at ease. Like the whole system is built on sort of safety. And I feel like insight gives you that ground as well. It gives you more safety in a sense because you understand why things are. You have like perspective.
And what about if insight is also like terrifying? Is there this pod and
Mhm.
like the in kind of that meeting or getting really close to it? I think there's this pod of which the now knowing something you can't unknow
Yeah.
is pretty like amazing, right? It's like, wow, this is so incredible because now
Yeah.
I know I'm in this knowing and this welcoming of that, but I'm like also terrified
Yeah.
what
I
comes.
feel like there's something there for you. I think you know something about that personally.
I do, yeah, I guess in many ways in life, I think that's been a part of like my like embodied experience of insight and I don't have like a cool like monk in Burma story. I'll leave those to you, but I certainly am like happy to share, some significant moments of insight from
Yeah.
myself, and we can kind of
Yeah, I'd
explore
love to
that
hear.
together.